And welcome back to another podcast with Mr. Hagan. And on this podcast, we're going to start talking about money, and then later on some future podcasts, we're going to get into monetary policy and the Federal Reserve. Today, on this podcast, we're going to start talking about money and what exactly is the function of money. Money, what does money do? So first of all, let's give kind of a definition here of money, and there's probably other definitions you could give other than this one, but this is going to be mine. Money is something that people use on some regular basis. Okay, they're going to use it regularly to purchase goods and services, and it allows us to escape barter. It allows us to escape the double coincidence of one. So for example, if there's not money and you happen to have some eggs that I want some of your eggs, and I want to cook them for breakfast or something, and so if I want your eggs, what am I going to do to get your eggs? Well, if there's no money, then I have to offer you something. I'm going to have to barter with you. Maybe I'm going to offer you a pair of shoes for the eggs, or I'll offer you a shirt for the eggs, or whatever I'm going to offer you. And here's the problem. You might not want what I have to offer you. You might not want a shirt. You might not want a shirt for the eggs. So the only way that, if you live in a world of barter, the only way that you can trade with each other is if you both happen to want the same thing in the same place at the same time. You got to have this double coincidence of wants. Well, money allows us to escape from that. Money allows us to escape from that by having something that everybody agrees that we will use on a regular basis to trade goods and services. So that's what I mean when I say money. Stuff we're going to use with regularity to trade with each other. So no longer, if I want your eggs, I don't have to have a pair of shoes to get the eggs. I can just give you some money. I can just give you some money for it. I can give you whatever this thing is that we're going to use to trade regularly. So money has three functions. The first function of money is that it acts as a medium of exchange. It acts as a medium of exchange. And what I mean by that, this is that whole idea that I was just talking about, that it eliminates barter. It's whatever that item is that buyers and sellers are going to use to trade goods and services. Whatever that thing is. It could be pieces of paper, it could be gold, it could be lots of things that have been used as money, and we'll talk about some of those on a future podcast. It eliminates the double coincidence of wants problem. I already mentioned that up here. It eliminates the problem of double coincidence of wants. I no longer have to have the same thing that you want. that we don't have to have the same stuff. You don't have to have what I want and I have what you want in order for us to trade. I can just give you some money. I don't need to barter with you. And this reduces transaction costs, and that just means it makes it easier to engage in transactions. Makes it much easier. So that's the first function of money, and I would argue, by the way, it's the most important. Okay, the other functions of money really aren't really relevant unless you have this. Money being used as a medium of exchange, as a thing to carry out transactions. The second The second function of money is it acts as a unit of account. That is to say, it acts as a measuring stick. So let's go back to the idea of trading eggs for shoes or eggs for shirts. Well, we have the question of even if you do want shirts in return for your eggs, how many shirts should you get? Or how many eggs should I get for my shirt? How many shirts should you get for an egg? What is the measuring stick to keep track of everything? How do I know what stuff is worth? Do I have to say, do I have to keep track of everything? My eggs are worth, a pair of shoes. They're worth 3 shirts. They're worth, how do I keep track of all of that? So having one thing called called money that acts as a medium of exchange then allows us to use that thing that we're calling money as a unit of account. That is, it will be the measuring stick, and we will look at the worth of everything will be made relative to whatever that unit account is, and then we can compare it to other goods and services. So I can say, oh, well, 12 eggs, they cost $1, and that's, kind of roughly what a can of Coke might cost. And so we can compare things to each other, and we can keep track of everything if we have a common unit of account. And that's exactly what we do with it. We keep debts with it. So imagine if we didn't have it and we had to keep track of debts. So, again, if I wanted the eggs and I didn't have a shirt with me, then I'd have to owe you one shirt in return for the eggs. And then we'd have to keep track of debt in terms of shirts and shoes and whatever. And that would be really confusing. So we can keep track of debts and accounts with one common thing. In our society, of course, we do that with dollars. And it allows comparisons of apples and oranges, which is kind of just the same thing as saying relative goods and services. We can compare goods and services to each other, their worth relative to whatever that measuring stick is. So, how much is an apple? How many dollars is an apple? How many dollars does it cost for an orange? And then we can compare them. Which one's more valuable? Which one costs more? All right. The third function of money is it acts as a store of value. And what I mean by that is it allows us to transfer purchasing power from the present to the future. That is to say, with barter, we can escape this a little bit with barter, but by and large with barter, if I want your eggs, then I got to have a shirt, and you give me the eggs, and I eat the eggs now, and the consumption all happens right now today. But with money, I can store it up. I can store up that money, and I can wait to consume those eggs sometime in the future. So money acts as a store of value. I can accept dollars today, but I don't have to spend them till next week. So if I sell my shirt and get eggs in return, I'm getting the eggs right now. But instead, I could sell my shirt for dollars, and then I could just hold those dollars for a while. I could spend them next week, next month, next year. It acts as a way of storing up future consumption. So wealth is all these different stores of value. They would be both monetary and non-monetary. Monetary means they would be money. Non-monetary means they would be other things. Houses would be a form of storing wealth. Stocks are a way of ownership in companies is a way of storing wealth. Bonds, which would be bonds are debt. That's a way of storing up wealth for the future. And so the real question with these different ways of storing wealth is, what is their liquidity? How fast can I turn something into a medium of exchange? So if I have dollars in my hand, that's pure liquidity. I have dollars in my hand, and I can use those dollars as a medium of exchange right now. On the other hand, houses, I can't use my house as a medium of exchange. I can't go to the grocery store and say, I'll give you my house in return for, lots of televisions or something, or I'll give you some shares of Apple stock in return for, or Microsoft stock or whatever in return for. I'll give you 3 shares of Microsoft in return for a gallon of milk. That would probably not be a very fair transaction, but I couldn't do it anyway. I have to take those stocks and I have to sell them, and I have to turn them into a medium of exchange in the form, typically in the United States, turning them into dollars, and then go spend it. So these things are not real liquid. It takes time to turn them into money, into something I can go use at the grocery store. And then it's generally true that there's a trade-off between liquidity and usefulness as a store of value. That is to say, things that tend to be very liquid and I can use them to go buy stuff at the store, they tend not to be good stores of value. They lose their value over time. On the other hand, things that are very useful as a store of value, they tend not to be as liquid. So there's a trade-off. And money would be the extreme example of that. Money is a very poor store of value. It loses a lot of value over time, but it is pure liquidity. I can use it to go to the store to buy stuff. So let's just look at this idea a little bit more. And this graph might be, this chart might be a little hard for you to see, but it says over here are the returns on money over time. This is the growth of money over time. And then this is the time from 1800 up to around the late 1990s or something like that. And I just want to show you what a poor store of value different various things are. So if you just held money, that's not going to do very well for you at all over time. So let's hold something like gold. How does gold do as a store of value? And many people would think gold's an excellent store of value. Of course it is, Hagen. It's going to, increase in value over time. Well, this line right here, this solid line, that's gold over time. And what you can see is that gold is not a very good store of value. That is to say, $1 of gold in that's probably like 1802, turns into about $13.37 of gold, getting near the present. So gold does not, what a dollar of gold bought you in 1802 would be equivalent to $13.37 today. Not a very good store of value. Compare that to stocks. Compare that to having that $1 in the stock market in 1802. Okay, here's your stock market returns over time. And that $1 in 1802 would be worth getting close to today, $7.5 million. $7.5 million. So we would say gold could be good in the past at liquidity, at buying goods and services, but it's not a very good store of value. Stocks are not as liquid, but they are an excellent store of value over the long run. This, by the way, is not investment advice, of course. What has happened in the past is not necessarily evidence of what is going to happen in the future. So let's just go back and look at this one more time. So what does money do for us? What's its function? The first thing that money does is it allows us to trade. It allows us to escape from barter. It's a medium of exchange. The second thing money does for us is it's a unit of account. It's a common measuring stick that we can use to value everything. And then another thing that money does is it allows us to store up consumption in the future. And we just saw that money's not very good at that, but it does do it. It does act as a store of value, but it just doesn't work real well over the long run because inflation tends to chip away at the value of it. But it's a very good store of value if you just want to spend some money next week or whatever the case is, next week, next month. It's a good way to store up future consumption. But if you want to store up future consumption for the long run, it tends not, at least in the past, has not been a very good store of value. So there you go. Functions of money. What does it do for us? Medium of exchange, unit of account, store of value. All right, this has been Mr. Hagen on another podcast. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you on the next podcast.